Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk to you about a moment that every successful man or woman has faced. A moment that feels terrifying, uncertain, and almost unbearable. But it is in that exact moment, the one that feels the scariest, that life hides the riches you are seeking. This is not just about money. It is about freedom, abundance, and the life you know deep down you were born to live. Fear is one of the most misunderstood experiences in human life. Most people see fear as a stop sign, a signal to turn around, or a warning that something dangerous lies ahead. But in truth, fear is often a compass pointing us directly toward the place where growth and opportunity live. The things that frighten us most, speaking up, starting something new, are almost always the very things that hold the power to transform our lives. If there were no fear, there would be no challenge. And without challenge, there would be no growth. Think about it. Every single breakthrough in human history was born in the presence of fear. The person who first sailed beyond the horizon did so while terrified of falling off the edge of the earth. The entrepreneur who started with nothing but an idea faced the fear of failure, ridicule, and loss. The leader who stood for change faced fear in the form of criticism, rejection, and resistance. But in every case, fear was not a barrier. It was an invitation to grow, to discover, to step into a larger life than the one they had known. Fear is not your enemy. It is a teacher. It tells you that what lies ahead is bigger than where you are now. It signals that you are leaving behind the comfort of the familiar and moving toward the uncertainty of growth. If you felt no fear at all, it would mean you are not stretching, not attempting anything worth your potential, not reaching for a life beyond the ordinary. Fear proves that you are on the edge of expansion. The tragedy is that most people misinterpret this signal. They believe fear means stop. They shrink back, retreat into safety, and convince themselves that the risk was too great. In doing so, they trade possibility for security and growth for comfort. They never realize that the wealth they desire, whether financial, emotional, or spiritual, is waiting on the other side of the very fear they ran from. They let the feeling of fear rob them of the life they were capable of creating. But those who rise above the average see fear differently. They feel it, they acknowledge it, but they do not obey it. They know that fear will always be present at the start of anything great, and so they walk forward anyway. That simple decision, to keep moving in spite of fear, is what separates the extraordinary from the ordinary. It is what builds wealth, success, confidence, and freedom. Every time you act in the face of fear, something remarkable happens. You expand. You become stronger, wiser, more capable. What once seemed terrifying becomes familiar, and your threshold for fear rises. You develop courage, and courage becomes the foundation of every achievement. Over time, fear no longer paralyzes you. It energizes you. It becomes proof that you are exactly where you need to be. So the next time fear shows up, do not run. Do not retreat. Recognize it for what it truly is, a sign that you're standing at the door of growth. Open that door. Step through it. On the other side lies the person you're meant to become, the opportunities you're meant to seize, and the wealth, both inner and outer, that you are destined to create. Wealth does not begin with money. It does not begin with a bank account, a business, or an inheritance. Wealth begins with something much deeper, something invisible, something that exists inside the mind of the individual. If you strip everything away from a man or woman, their possessions, their titles, their income, you still cannot take away the most valuable seed of all, the way they think. And it is in this way of thinking that the foundation of true wealth is built. The average person believes wealth is something outside of them. They believe it is tied to luck, circumstance, or connections. They look at the wealthy and assume those individuals were simply given opportunities that they were not. But if you look closer, if you study the lives of those who have built and maintained wealth across generations, you will find one common thread. Their thoughts were different long before their bank accounts were. The mind is the workshop of riches. Every fortune ever created began first as an idea, a vision, a burning belief that something more was possible. Long before a skyscraper is built, the architect imagines it. Long before a business becomes global, the founder envisions it. The mind creates it first, and reality follows. The problem is, most people refuse to believe this simple truth. They look at their present circumstances, they see lack, and they allow those circumstances to dictate their thoughts, and so they remain trapped, because the mind cannot create abundance if it is constantly filled with doubt, fear, and limitation. Wealth begins the moment you decide to think differently, to think in terms of possibility instead of impossibility, to think in terms of abundance instead of scarcity, to think in terms of service, value, and growth instead of excuses, complaints, and limitation. When a person trains their mind to focus on opportunity rather than obstacles, they begin to attract and create wealth in ways they could not previously imagine. This is not about wishful thinking. This is not about repeating affirmations without action. Wealth requires work, discipline, and persistence, but it all begins with a mind that is open to wealth. If the mind rejects the possibility, no amount of effort will create it. That is why two people can work equally hard, but one remains poor while the other becomes wealthy. The difference is not just in their actions, but in the soil of thought in which those actions are planted. The poor mindset plants seeds in barren ground. The wealthy mindset plants seeds in fertile soil, where ideas can grow and multiply. Consider this. Every invention, every discovery, every breakthrough we enjoy today was once considered impossible. The aeroplane, the computer, the smartphone, the internet, all of them were born from the mind of someone who refused to accept common thinking. They dared to imagine a world that did not yet exist, and in doing so they unlocked riches not only for themselves, but for millions of others. The wealth they achieved was the result of a mindset that refused to settle for the ordinary. The truth is, your current financial reality is not permanent. It is a reflection of the thoughts you have allowed yourself to think up to this point. If those thoughts change, if you choose to discipline your mind, expand your vision, and adopt the mindset of wealth, your life will begin to shift. Slowly at first, then suddenly, you'll begin to see opportunities where others see problems. You will begin to take actions others are too afraid to take, and as you do, the world will respond. Because wealth is not an accident. It is a reflection of the mind that created it. Wealth begins with mindset, not money. If you can master the way you think, you will eventually master the way you live. The riches of the world are waiting, but they are reserved for the man or woman who first claims them in thought. The mind is the starting point, always. Most people stop at fear and never move forward. That's the tragic truth. It isn't a lack of intelligence, it isn't a lack of opportunity, and it certainly isn't fate conspiring against them. It's simply that when fear shows up, they treat it as a wall instead of a doorway. They believe that the presence of fear is a sign they should stop, when in reality it's the clearest signal that they are standing on the edge of growth. Fear only appears when you're about to leave the familiar, when you're about to step into a place where your life could change forever. Think about how fear operates. It doesn't rise when you do what you've always done. It doesn't knock on your door when you're staying comfortable, safe, and predictable. Fear arrives when you're about to risk rejection, when you're about to test yourself, when you're on the verge of something new. That's why so many people never step into wealth, success, or fulfillment. The moment they feel fear, they retreat back into the small circle of what's known, where nothing grows and nothing extraordinary is ever built. The tragedy is that fear is not the enemy, it's the compass. Fear is the universe whispering, "This matters. This is the path." Every dream worth chasing will feel frightening at first. Writing the book, starting the business, making the call, speaking the truth, all of it feels heavy with uncertainty. And because fear disguises itself as danger, most people treat it as proof they should quit. But the reality is, fear is proof you're alive, proof you're stretching, proof that you are stepping into territory where the rewards are greater. Consider the lives of those who achieved greatness. Every one of them stood in front of fear. They didn't have guarantees. They didn't have promises. They had uncertainty staring them in the face, but they moved anyway. That's the only difference. It wasn't luck or connections that set them apart. It was their refusal to let fear dictate their destiny. Where others saw a wall, they saw a test. Where others retreated, they leaned in. The world is full of people who never truly lived because they waited for fear to disappear. But fear never goes away. The person who earns wealth and freedom is not the one who avoids fear, but the one who learns to walk with it. They understand that fear is not a stop sign, it is a green light. The trembling hands, the racing heart, the hesitation, all of it means you are standing in the exact place where life can be transformed. The wealth you dream of, whether in money, freedom, or fulfillment, does not hide in the safe zones of comfort. It hides in the very places that make you feel exposed, unqualified, and unprepared. Fear will tell you you're not ready. Fear will whisper that you could fail. But failure is not falling short. Failure is stopping altogether. The people who create extraordinary lives are the ones who act while afraid, who take steps while shaking, who refuse to let the presence of fear decide their future. So when fear shows up, don't run from it. Don't hide behind excuses. See it for what it is, a signal, a guide, a marker that you're stepping onto a path that has meaning. The majority will turn back at this moment, but you don't have to. You can step forward, trembling yet determined, and when you do, you'll discover that fear was never the barrier. It was the bridge. Discipline is the bridge between dreams and reality. Most people hold vivid pictures of the life they want, the wealth they desire, the freedom they imagine, but few ever cross over from imagining to achieving. The reason is simple: they underestimate the power of daily discipline. Dreams are abundant, almost free. You can sit in silence for a few moments and create an empire in your mind, but without discipline, those castles remain nothing more than illusions. Discipline is the act of taking that vision, breaking it into consistent steps, and walking them out no matter how you feel. Think about it. Every person who has ever achieved greatness faced the same temptations to quit, the same excuses, the same pull toward comfort. What separates those who succeed is not talent nor luck, but discipline. It is the quiet, relentless force that takes a scattered dream and turns it into a concrete result. It doesn't ask for perfection, it demands consistency. That's where most people falter. They wait until they feel motivated, they wait until conditions are perfect, and in doing so, they waste years. Discipline doesn't wait, it acts. Discipline is not glamorous, it is often repetitive, boring, and unseen. Nobody claps for the person who wakes up early to study, who saves a portion of their income instead of spending it, who puts in the hours when no one is watching. Yet those simple, repeated acts form the unseen structure of wealth and success. One day when the results are visible, people will call it luck. But it was never luck. It was the silent power of discipline at work. Consider the man who wants financial freedom. Without discipline, he will always remain a slave to impulses, buying what he doesn't need, chasing every distraction, and wondering why success seems out of reach. But the disciplined man makes sacrifices today for a better tomorrow. He delays gratification, builds habits that compound, and steadily moves toward his vision. The process is not always exciting, but the reward is extraordinary. The same is true for health, relationships, and personal growth. In every area of life, discipline is the force that transforms desire into achievement. You may dream of being strong, but without disciplined training, your body remains weak. You may dream of deep love, but without disciplined effort, your relationships wither. You may dream of wealth, but without disciplined work, you remain trapped. Discipline is the thread that ties every dream to its fulfillment. There will be days when discipline feels like a burden. Days when you question if the effort is worth it. Days when progress feels invisible. But those are the most critical moments. Because discipline is not about how you act when things are easy, it's about how you act when they are not. To stay the course when the reward has not yet appeared, to keep building when the world has not yet noticed. That is the true test of discipline. And here is the truth. Once discipline becomes part of who you are, it no longer feels like chains. It becomes freedom. The disciplined person is not ruled by moods, temptations, or distractions. They are guided by principle. They act in alignment with their vision, and as a result, reality bends toward them. That is why discipline is the bridge. Without it, you stand on one side of the river, dreaming of the life you wish to live. With it, you cross to the other side and claim what is yours. Success requires clarity of purpose, and without it, even the most talented, hard-working person can wander endlessly without ever reaching their destination. Most people don't fail because they lack ability. They fail because they lack direction. Think about it. A ship leaving the harbor with no destination, no map, and no captain is doomed to drift until it eventually runs aground or sinks. A ship with a clear charted course, however, may face storms and setbacks, but it knows exactly where it's going, and because of that it almost always arrives. Life works the same way. Clarity of purpose is not about having everything figured out from the beginning. It's about knowing what you want with such certainty that your decisions, your habits, and your daily actions align with it. It doesn't mean you won't stumble. It doesn't mean you won't experience fear, doubt, or frustration. But it does mean that no matter what happens, you know why you are doing what you are doing. That why becomes your anchor when everything else feels uncertain. Many people confuse activity with progress. They are busy from morning until night, chasing tasks, responding to demands, running here and there, but if you ask them where they are going, they can't give you a clear answer. Activity without clarity is wasted energy. It may give the illusion of productivity, but in reality, it keeps you stuck in the same place. True success requires more than motion, it requires direction. And direction comes from clarity of purpose. When you define your purpose, life begins to shift. Opportunities that once seemed invisible start to appear because now your mind is trained to recognize them. People who share your vision are drawn to you because purpose creates magnetism. Discipline, which often feels impossible without a reason, suddenly becomes easier because you are no longer forcing yourself to work, you are being pulled forward by something greater than comfort. Clarity turns sacrifice into investment and hardship into training. Clarity also eliminates distractions. When you know exactly what you want, you stop wasting time on things that don't matter. You don't need to say yes to every opportunity or every invitation. You don't need to chase every trend or follow every opinion. Your purpose becomes your compass, pointing north even when the world is loud and confusing. Without that compass, you risk living someone else's life, chasing goals that don't belong to you, and waking up years later realizing you never pursued what mattered most. History shows us that those who achieved great things, whether in business, art, science, or leadership, all had one thing in common: clarity of purpose. They knew what they wanted, and that certainty gave them the courage to endure obstacles that would have crushed others. They weren't stronger, smarter, or luckier. They were focused, and focus, when fueled by a clear sense of purpose, becomes unstoppable. If you want to succeed, you must take the time to ask yourself the hard questions. What do I truly want? Why do I want it? What am I willing to give in exchange? When the answers become clear, your path becomes powerful. Purpose is the seed of every success story, and clarity is the sunlight that makes it grow. Without it, you'll drift. With it, you'll rise. Riches come from service, value, and persistence. This truth is as old as civilization itself, yet it remains the most overlooked principle in the pursuit of wealth. Many chase after shortcuts, gambling on luck or hoping for quick wins that never last. But real, enduring riches, whether financial, spiritual, or emotional, are born out of what you consistently give to the world and the persistence with which you deliver it. When we talk about service, we are not talking about servitude. Service means recognizing a need and stepping forward to meet it. Every great fortune in history was built on the foundation of solving problems. Look at the great inventors, business builders, and leaders. What did they do? They identified something people needed, something that improved lives, and they dedicated themselves to delivering it better than anyone else. They didn't wait for the world to hand them opportunity. They created it by serving others in ways that mattered. Value is the currency of wealth. People do not pay for effort, they pay for results. They do not reward hours spent, they reward transformation. If you wish to be rich, ask yourself, what value am I bringing into the lives of others? The world measures wealth not by what you keep, but by what you contribute. The most successful individuals are those who make themselves indispensable. They study, refine, and elevate their skills until their work becomes difficult to replace. When your presence brings undeniable value, wealth will inevitably follow you because value is magnetic. But service and value alone are not enough. This is where persistence enters the equation. Anyone can serve once. Anyone can create value for a season. But the world tests those who would be wealthy by placing obstacles in their path. Rejection, failure, doubt, and delay, these are the natural guardians of success. They are not signs that you should quit. They are signs that you are on the right road. The universe asks, how badly do you want it? Will you persist when others stop? Persistence is what transforms an average effort into a legacy. It is the act of showing up again and again, even when no one is watching, even when results are invisible. It is the quiet courage to continue refining your craft, improving your service, and adding more value than you did yesterday. Persistence turns small beginnings into empires. It turns unnoticed effort into unstoppable momentum. Without persistence, the seeds of service and value wither before they can grow. With persistence, they bear fruit beyond imagination. Think of the most successful companies in the world. They did not become household names overnight. They began as small ideas, often ignored or ridiculed, but through relentless persistence they grew into giants. The same is true for individuals. Every man and woman who has reached great wealth can look back on a time when they wanted to quit, but chose instead to push forward. That decision, the decision to persist, is the hidden key behind every fortune. So riches do not come from chance. They do not come from luck. They come from aligning your life with service by offering something meaningful to others. They come from creating value that others cannot ignore. And most of all, they come from refusing to quit when the world seems to push back. Service, value, and persistence. Master these three, and wealth in every sense of the word will find you. The world rewards courage, not hesitation. This simple truth has shaped the course of history and will shape the course of your life. When you study the lives of those who have achieved extraordinary wealth, influence, and freedom, you find that their defining moments were never built on comfort or certainty. They were built on courage, the ability to step forward into the unknown, to take action when fear screamed for retreat. Courage has always been the currency of progress, and it always will be. Most people live trapped, not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack opportunity, but because they hesitate. They feel fear and take it as a warning to stop, when in reality, fear is a signal to proceed. Hesitation builds walls, courage breaks them. Every time you hesitate, you strengthen the chains of limitation around yourself. Every time you act in spite of fear, you weaken those chains. Slowly, with consistent courage, they fall away completely, and you find yourself free to move toward wealth, toward purpose, toward the life you once thought was reserved for someone else. Think of the opportunities you've already let pass because hesitation stepped in. How many times did you have the idea but never acted on it? How many times did you want to speak up but remain silent? How many chances to grow slipped through your fingers because you allowed fear to dictate your choice? Each of those moments was a door, and on the other side of the door was reward. The world does not hand out prizes to those who stand still. It gives them to those who move forward, even when their knees shake. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the mastery of it. The wealthy, the successful, the fulfilled are not fearless. They feel the same doubts, the same hesitation, the same terror of failure that you and I feel. The difference is simple. They act anyway. They have learned that waiting for fear to vanish is a fool's game, because fear never vanishes before the act. It vanishes because of the act. Action is the antidote to fear, and repeated action is what transforms a timid person into a confident one. Life has a way of testing us. It places before us moments that are disguised as threats, when in reality they are gateways to fortune. A new idea, a risky investment, a bold move, a difficult conversation. Each of these is laced with fear, yet each carries with it the potential to change your entire future. The question is not whether the fear will appear, it always will. The question is whether you will stand frozen in hesitation or move forward in courage. The marketplace itself proves this principle. Think of the entrepreneur who steps into the unknown with a vision no one else believes in. At first, they are ridiculed. People doubt them. But they act, they persist, they commit with courage when others wait for proof. And because of that, they reap the reward. The world rewards them not because they were the smartest, but because they were the boldest. History remembers the courageous, not the hesitant. In your own life, you must decide what role courage will play. Every great achievement requires you to pass through fear. The larger the fear, the greater the reward on the other side. Courage opens doors that hesitation keeps locked. The wealth you dream of, the freedom you crave, the success you long for, it is all waiting. But it waits on the other side of action. The world does not pay for hesitation, it pays for boldness. And the moment you choose courage over hesitation, you align yourself with the very law that has lifted every great person who came before you. When fear appears, most people treat it as a wall. They feel the tension in their chest, a doubt in their mind, and immediately assume it is a signal to stop. But what they don't realize is that fear is rarely a wall, it is a doorway. On the other side of that doorway is everything they desire. Wealth, freedom, opportunity, growth. The very thing that feels like it's trying to push them away is actually pointing them toward the place they are meant to go. If you face the fear, you will find the fortune. Think about it. Every person who has ever created something valuable, who has ever built wealth, who has ever changed their life, did it while feeling fear. They didn't wait for the fear to vanish, because fear doesn't disappear before the action. It disappears after. Action is the cure for fear. When you step into what frightens you, the fear begins to dissolve, and in its place comes confidence, strength, and clarity. But if you wait until the fear is gone, you will wait for the rest of your life. The truth is, fear and wealth are tied together. Wealth is not earned by playing safe. Wealth is earned by those willing to take calculated risks, to walk where others hesitate, to build while others doubt. And this doesn't mean reckless gambling. It means courage. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to act while fear is present. The moment you decide that you will move forward even though it shakes you, you step into the small group of people who actually create extraordinary results. Fear is also a test. It asks you, how much do you really want this? Many talk about wanting wealth, freedom, or success, but the moment they feel discomfort, they retreat. Fear exposes the difference between wishful thinking and true desire. If your dream is strong enough, fear will not stop you, it will fuel you. You will look at the trembling hands, the pounding heart, and instead of running, you will say, this means I'm growing. This means I'm stepping into something bigger than I've ever known. That is how fortune finds you. And what kind of fortune are we speaking of? Not only money, though that will come to the bold. The greater fortune is transformation. The person you become on the other side of fear is stronger, wiser, and more capable than the person who stands still. Every time you walk into what you fear, you increase your capacity to earn, to lead, to build. That capacity is the real wealth, because it can never be taken away. The money, the opportunities, the recognition, those are byproducts. The real treasure is the strength you gain when you choose courage over comfort. The world rewards courage. Look around and you'll see it everywhere. The companies built by people who risked failure, the fortunes earned by those who were told it's impossible but moved forward anyway. The inventions, the breakthroughs, the movements, all of them came from individuals who felt fear but refused to let it rule their lives. And every single one of those stories teaches the same lesson. If you face the fear, you will find the fortune. So the next time fear rises in you, don't misinterpret it as a stop sign. See it as an invitation. It is life whispering to you that you are standing at the edge of something important. Step into it. Trust that the fear is proof you're moving in the right direction. On the other side lies not just wealth, but a richer, fuller, stronger version of yourself. That is the real fortune waiting for you.